Well, good evening and welcome. My name is Rob Carter, and I'm the president of the Addison County Chamber of Commerce. In partnership with the Addison County Economic Development Corporation, I'm pleased to welcome you to tonight's Addison County Legislative Candidate Forum for the Vergennes area. The Addison District State Senate candidates, as well as the House candidates for Addison 3, have gathered here to speak on a wide range of issues and topics of greatest interest to the voters in our community. Many thanks go to our media sponsor, the Addison Independent. In a moment, I'll introduce our moderator, but first, a word from Sarah Audette, the Chamber's Events and Tourism Manager. Sarah?
Great, thank you, Rob. Good evening, everyone. I do have a few housekeeping items. So first, the questions our moderator will be posing this evening have been determined in advance based on input we gathered through a community survey. We are anticipating that we will have time toward the end of the forum to invite questions from the audience. If you would like to submit a question, you may do so at any point during the forum by clicking the Q&A button and typing in your question. Please identify your name and town of residence. The moderator will pose as many audience questions as time allows at the end. Second, we will be sharing a screen this evening to display a timer to all of the candidates. For our audience members at home who would like to see all of the candidates at once, you can escape out of full screen mode, set your display to gallery view, and make the timer screen smaller. In case you run into any issues with your audio, you should use the call-in information that you received in your confirmation email. And finally, I will note that tonight's forum is being recorded. The recording will be posted to the Chamber's website at addisoncounty.com and the Economic Development website at addisoncountyedc.org by the end of the week. And now I'll hand it back to Rob.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So it's my pleasure to introduce this evening's moderator, Shawn Oxford, who is a resident and business owner in Bristol. Go ahead, Shawn.
Terrific. Thank you, Rob. And thank you to the candidates and citizens for virtually gathering here and being part of the process. So I appreciate it. Good evening. I'll start by sharing the guidelines. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Every candidate will have the opportunity for one 30-second rebuttal at any time during the forum. And by the way, candidates, just go down to the Q&A section of the chat and let me know if you have, or raise your hand. And I'm sure Sarah will, nudge me along if I don't see you. So please do that. If there's any time at the end of the forum, we will accept questions from the audience. Candidates will also have a 1 minute opening and closing statement. We are screen sharing a timer so the candidates will know how much time they have to respond. Let's begin with candidate introductions, 1 minute each. We'll start with Senate candidates and then the House candidates, all in alphabetical order. We'll start with Chris Bray. Chris.
Thank you, Shawn. Good evening. My name is Chris Bray, and I'm a state senator from Bristol. I want to thank the Chamber for hosting this event. You know, a strong democracy depends upon good information and events such as this, so it helps us all cast an informed vote. I want to start by addressing a fundamental question. Why have I chosen to serve in the legislature? And for me, it begins with my family. My parents instilled in all their children the idea that your role in life includes giving back to your community through service. And I've engaged in community service since I was a kid. As a teenager, I volunteered at a local hospital. In college, I was a counselor and rescue squad member. When my kids entered public school, I became a reading and writing coach. When my kids began playing sports, I began coaching, referee in soccer, baseball. I went on to serve on Town Fire and Rescue, United Way Board, the Land Trust, UVM at trustee. And for 12 years, I've been serving as a citizen legislator in Montpelier. Service is a way of life for me, and I would like to continue to serve you in the Vermont Senate. I ask you for your vote again this year, and I look forward to this evening's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Up next, Peter Briggs.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Peter Briggs. I lived here in the town of Addison all my life. I've been on the Addison Select Board for quite a while now. I've run for office a few times. And one of the main reasons why I'm running is concern about the future for the average person in our state faces many problems. Not a small one is the economic plight, and Keynesian economics is not going to fix the problem. Heavier tax burden is causing a lot of Vermonters to have to leave, a lot of Vermonters to not being able to come back when they graduate, and a lot of ones that are here not being able to prosper. That's one of the big issues I'd like to tackle when I go to Montpelier. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Peter. I don't see that John or Archie have joined us yet. So Ruth Hardy.
Thank you, and good evening. Thank you to the Chamber moderator and other candidates and members of the public who are here tonight. My name is Ruth Hardy. For the past 2 years, I have had the honor of being one of 2 state senators to represent the Addison district in the Vermont State Senate. I serve on the Senate Agriculture and Education committees, so a large focus of my work has been on schools and farms. I've worked to make schools more equitable, safe, and effective for all students, and I've worked to make farms more prosperous and sustainable. During the COVID crisis, my focus has been on ensuring that my constituents have the information necessary to stay safe and secure. I provided regular public updates and helped many constituents access state resources so they can be healthy and financially stable. I've also advocated for a safe reopening of Vermont that emphasizes strong public health protocols and public safety first. As the mother of 3 kids and the daughter of an elderly mother, I know the past 6 months have been extremely stressful for families throughout Vermont, and I have worked tirelessly to help families make it through. I'm proud of my work in the Senate and look forward to this debate tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Matt Birong.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate the effort that went into setting this up in a digital format. My name is Representative Matt Birong. I represent the District of Addison 3, which is the towns of Addison, Ferrisburgh, Panton, Waltham, and the city of Vergennes. I was elected 2 years ago and just finished my first term. I asked to be elected to help be a voice of Vermont's small and independent restaurants. Throughout the course of my time in the legislature now and the years preceding that, I worked on behalf of policies that support Vermont's small businesses as well as the workforce that we provide. I don't believe that working towards and with those 2 things is mutually exclusive. I also serve on the board of Main Street Alliance of Vermont, which is a small business organization. Counseling Services of Addison County, our county designated agency, and the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Vergennes.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Tim Buskey.
Thank you, Shawn. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm running for one of 2 seats, representing Addison, Ferrisburgh, and Waltham, Vergennes in the Addison 3 race. I'm currently a retired small businessman, and I've owned and operated a business both in Middlebury and one most recently in Vergennes. I have extensive community experience as a selectman in both Middlebury and in Addison. 30 years plus as an administrator and a CEO of nonprofit organizations and as a registered lobbyist in the Vermont legislature. Currently, I serve as a vice president of Shawn Villa, and I've past chairman of the Addison County Chamber of Commerce, currently elected Addison Town Moderator. My family and I have been Addison residents for 25 plus years, and all the family live in Vermont.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Diane Lanpher.
Hi, thank you. And I'd like to add my thanks to those who have sponsored tonight, the Chamber and the Addison Economic Development Corporation, as well as the Addison Independent, and especially our moderator, Shawn. Thank you. I am Diane Lanpher, Representative Lanpher, and I am one of the 2 representatives that are currently serving in Addison 3. And I have been in office for 12 years now, 6 years on the House Transportation Committee and 6 years on the House Appropriations Committee. And I hope to continue to serve for another 2 years. I've been a member of our community for 36 years and raised my family here, and a wife, mom, and very proud grandmother. Community engagement is what my candidacy, how it initiated my candidacy back in the early 2000s. And I've been involved in a variety of activities that serves our greater community ever since. Our community and our state are strong. And that is because we work together to support each other and we tackle the issues that come before us. I have been and will continue to be the kind of leader that represents the diverse community that we live in. Some of the beliefs that I carry from the time that I started to run is I believe that government can have a positive role in people's lives. And I believe one person can make a very big difference. And thank you. And I look forward to tonight's discussion.
Thank you, Diane. Steve Thurston. Steve, you're still on mute. There you
I'll
go.
get this, I think. Thanks to Sarah and Rob and Shawn and the Addison County Chamber and Addison County Economic Development Corporation for getting us all together tonight, and greetings to my fellow candidates and to viewers on their home screens. My name is Steve Thurston. I'm a Vermont resident since 1970, a Ferrisburg homeowner since 1995, a retired home builder in the Manchester-Dorset area, former member of the Manchester Rescue Squad, Select Board, Zoning Board, Conservation Commission, Elementary School Board, Long Trail School Board, and Maple Street School Board, and Factory Point Bank Board of Directors. I decided to run alongside Tim Buskey to bring balance to the legislature, which currently numbers 102 Democrats and progressives to 43 Republicans, giving the Democrats and progressives a 2/3 supermajority. Democrats and progressives have total control over the legislative agenda, which bills are considered, which bills are passed and sent to the governor, and if necessary, passed into law over the governor's veto. Republicans, including the governor, essentially have no voice. As Matt Birong wrote in a recent Front Porch Forum, when power remains unchecked, or when members of our own communities don't feel represented, our communities suffer. I could not agree more with this statement. Many do not feel represented by the supermajority in control of Vermont's government. The sense of what I have encountered matches my own. Tim and I can help fix that problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. All right, so thank you very much all for the candidates for those introductions. We appreciate it. Now to get started, we're going to start with question number 1, which will first be addressed by Tim Buskey. The question is this: a handful of respondents to our community survey expressed concern for the future of rural Vermont. One person even shared that, from their perspective, laws enacted at the state level adversely impact our less populated areas. If elected, what will you do to ensure rural areas like Addison County will thrive? Tim.
Thank you, Shawn. What will I do? I will make every effort to listen to the constituents in my area and to carry out programs and that can be heard in Montpelier. We'll very aggressively be representing the area, the 5 towns, and I think that we'll come up with some ideas on where to make those ideas known and how to get legislation passed that will move us forward. We're in a rural area, and a lot of our issues are agricultural issues in addition to being a rural area issues. And I think some of my background will help me in determining some ideas of which way to go.
Great, thank you, Tim. Diane Lanpher.
Thank you. Same question?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you're right. There is much more sometimes a divide in our state between those that represent the rural communities and those that represent larger cities and counties in this. There's very often different alliances that happen within the State House, and political denominations have nothing to do with that. But rural and urban does have its own special considerations that must be taken. So some of the things that happened is that when there's, whether there's legislation or if there's something before us to look at, there's a rural development caucus that's in the State House that will weigh in on different issues because of they'll be involved in that, and we look to them for their advice and opinion on the impact. And same thing with low income and families and children. I see my time. I'll pay attention. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. Steve Thurston.
Can you hear me?
We can. Yes, you're good.
So rural areas need local control. I think primarily they need, small towns need to have their small schools, and rural areas need jobs and opportunity. And I think the state can play a big role there by giving back control to the schools, by recognizing that local control is important to communities. And so they should be in a position to make their own decisions about things like renewable energy project locations. The need for us to work our way out of this pandemic by having jobs for people tells me that what I'm noticing is that the real estate market in the rural areas has become very hot, and that's created opportunities for people in the construction trades to be hired to do all kinds of remodeling work on homes that have been purchased by people coming from out of state to escape the pandemic and the unrest that we're seeing in some of the cities. So the role that the state can play there, I think, is to try not to be a nanny to the entire state, but to recognize that people have a right to be left alone and make decisions for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Matt Birong.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to agree that housing is actually one of the things that we can really capitalize on as a growth potential concept for rural development in this district and in this county. The greater Vergennes area has less than a 1% vacancy rate on its rental units. We have a very robust housing market. So one of the things I focused on working in the housing committee, as well as with other pieces of legislation, is permit reform, especially surrounding Act 250 as it pertains to designated downtowns, village centers, and NDAs. I would like to see that process put in the hands of local government because they have those systems in check, taking the redundancies away at the state level. The quicker we can get housing built up in a responsible way where we have the appropriate infrastructure, the quicker we can get more families in the area, more kids in the schools, expand our tax base. It offers a larger pool of individuals for workforce. Once you start addressing the housing problem, it makes it easier to start checking the boxes on the other issues we're facing.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Peter Briggs.
Yeah, well, I am from a rural area. I've lived in town of Addison, which is probably about as rural as you can get until you get to the Northeast Kingdom. So I know what hurts us. Some things that hurts us are things like not being able to do business in the rural area because Montpelier keeps having this Blittersdorf idea that everything's got to be done in compact, dense urban centers. We need to be able to do our businesses out here in the rural areas. If you want to expand tax base, it's with businesses. Homes bring tax burdens in the form of children. So, and you're going to have people move here. They got to have jobs unless they're going to work online. So you got to have businesses. If Montpelier wants to improve rural life, they got to trust us more. One example is if a farmer is selling directly to a consumer, they aren't going to sell them a bad product or they're not going to be in business very long. Montpelier doesn't have to swoop in all the time with a lot of regulations to protect everybody because people are smart enough to go where the best service is provided.
Thank you, Peter. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. As a state senator, I represent 26 towns across Addison County and Huntington, and most of those towns are very small towns. And I try to represent all 26 of them equally, regardless of their size. As a member of the Senate Agriculture Committee, I've spent the past 2 years working on agriculture issues, which are key to Addison County and our economic vitality. Another issue that is important to rural towns is expansion of broadband and interconnectivity. And as Representative Birong mentioned, housing. I think the rural areas, as well as the sort of quote unquote larger towns, a lot of the issues are the same. We want to make sure that our families are taken care of and that they have the services and the support they need, including transportation and mental health services to prevent isolation. So I think that one thing I'm proud of in Addison County is that we work really, really well together across the county, regardless of size of town. So thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Chris Bray.
Thanks. This is a great question for Addison County, for sure. You know, sometimes we call ourselves a land of milk and honey. When I first went to the House, I asked to be on the House Ag Committee. And when I came to the Senate, I was also on the Ag Committee. And I also have served on the Vermont Milk Commission because agriculture is so essential to rural Vermont and particularly Addison County. I started the Farm to Plate program more than a decade ago to help us diversify what we do in agriculture and food. And in the decade since, we've added 842 new businesses, added 7,700 Vermonters making a living in that area, and added over $110 million in new farm gate revenues. So it's been a way to build the economy that builds on Addison County's unique strengths. We also have complementary work in the clean energy economy. And there's also even cleaning up the lake adds employment here in Addison County. So I've worked on things that play to home and play to our own strengths. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And Jon Christiano has joined us. So Jon, same question to you. Welcome. I think you're still on mute, Jon. Bottom left. Here you go. We can't hear you, Jon. Maybe some technical issues. I'm not sure that your sound is working. Can anybody hear Jon? I didn't think so.
I'll send Jon a chat message and help him get his audio sorted out. We can circle back to him when we get that fixed. I'll let you know.
Okay, terrific. Well, I'll move on to the next question and then we can circle back to Jon when his audio issues have been resolved. And by the way, the question, under the question and answer section, all of these questions are posted. So for the candidates as well as those joining us at home, please review that if you need to. Question 2, and this is going to be posed to Ruth Hardy first. The question is this. Last month, Dr. Anthony Fauci said that the Vermont's response to the coronavirus pandemic should be a model for the country. What is one thing that you believe that the state government has done well? And what is one thing you believe state government should do differently? Ruth.
Thank you. I agree with Dr. Anthony Fauci that our response to the COVID pandemic has been a model for the rest of the country. And we've done so many things, right? It's hard for me to pick just one thing. I think one thing that we've done from the very beginning is we took this very seriously and we worked together across party lines, across levels of government, across communities, across our state, and made sure that we had a science-based response to this pandemic. And we made sure that we took care of families and took care of people during this pandemic. I'm incredibly proud of the work that we've done. Our communication has been excellent, and I have tried incredibly hard to communicate with my constituents across the county to make sure that they have the information they need. In terms of what we could do better, it's hard to pick what we could do better. I think we've done so many things right. So I guess I would have to think a little bit more on what we could do better. There's always room for improvement, probably in communication. But overall, I think we've done an excellent job. And I think we have worked well and need to just continue our efforts and our vigilance. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ruth. I don't think Jon is back as of yet, so we'll move on and circle back. Chris Bray.
Thanks. You know, I would repeat much of what Senator Hardy's just said in terms of the spirit of cooperation. The people have an impression from national politics that there's a lot of divisiveness out there. And I would say I watched state government and the legislature come together in very little time to make many programs, set up programs, alter programs, adjust on the fly. And there was, I'd say, no partisanship to it. It was just everyone pulling on the oars together to get good things done. And Vermonters pitched in, themselves, distancing, masking, etc. And the benefit to all of us is that we have the lowest infection rate in the country. I'd say one area where we could use some improvement is with our Department of Labor's unemployment system, which was really designed for very low volumes and designed to screen people as vigorously as possible, as opposed to respond promptly to people in need for support.
Thank you, Chris. Peter Briggs.
The only thing I can see that's gone very well is that I have a farm I can stay on and not had to venture out in public. The state's response to this, I can't think of anything that's been very well about it, because things like Attorney General Donovan's attitude toward business owners who are just trying to make a living is very saddening to me. The wealth, the livelihoods that people have lost from this is tremendous and really not known very well by elites, especially by Anthony Fauci. I guess the only good news, if you could call it good news, is this pandemic shutdown will be a blip on the radar and lost everybody's memory thanks to the depression that's coming after this. We are in for real serious economic times. I don't have anything good to say about this. This is serious.
Thank you, Peter. We're going to circle back and see if John's got his audio taken care of here. John, you all set?
I think so. Can you hear me?
We certainly can. You're good.
Okay, all right. These computers don't like me. I'm too analog, old-fashioned analog person. So
well, it's your stage now.
Good. So the question was?
The question is this, is that Dr. Anthony Fauci has responded saying that as far as the state's response to coronavirus, that we're somewhat of should be a model for the country. What is one thing you believe state government has done well? And what is one thing you believe state government should do differently?
I do think that the state government has exercised restraint in how they confine us. I don't like being confined. I'm never have been in my life other than this. However, I do think that my wife and I have a little contest, I guess. I count the cars coming by as in the opposite direction from out of state. And I think that if Vermonters need to be quarantined, if we go out of state for a few days, that people coming in here, so once you're passing through, that they ought to be quarantined if they stop for more than a couple of hours or to get something to eat or gas. I'm not sure how that, it seems to be a difference of opinion, and I'm not sure how that's ever going to work out. It just seems strange to me.
Great. Thank you, John. Diane Lanpher.
Thank you. I would say that the first thing that we did very, very well as a state is that our governor was very quick and didn't let things get out of hand before he was ready to jump on this. It's very uncomfortable, and you're not always sure that if you're going to take some very big measures, if whether or not it might have been too much too soon, and he did it just right. And from, the governor and I don't agree on a lot of things, but this is where as a working together for the lives of Vermonters really came in to play. And I think what other people have said as well is that, the legislature and the governor worked together, and none more than when we were asked to help with the unemployment issue, that he reached out to us to actually help the Labor Department. And I see my time. What I would do difference is that I think we could have done a better job with helping the federal government communicate good things.
Thank you, Diane. Steve Thurston.
Thank you. I think it might be only in hindsight that we can really judge the job that we've done, because I think there's really tough times ahead, economically speaking. And one of the things I noticed early on when the pandemic was hitting New York area, it was very frightening, I think, to all of us to see that kind of spread. But one of the things we learned very early on about this was that there were people that had certain risk factors, comorbidities, that made them very susceptible to this virus. And I didn't hear nearly enough coming from the administration about how people should be aware of that and protect themselves. So the idea that the entire economy needed to be shut down for so long, I'm not sure that that we're going to find that that was really necessary. And I think we've paid a tremendous economic price and a price to our social fabric and to the wellness of people generally. And I think that all has to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Matt Birong.
Thank you. So I think that one of the things that we did, perhaps one of the best things that we did as a state, was dedicating a significant portion, I think $200+ million to the economic relief grants with the COVID relief funds from the federal government. Many states did not do that, Massachusetts being one of them. I've spoken to people there. I worked in Boston for about 4 or 5 years. A while back, and they did not target money with their funds in that way, and they have seen a far more significant closure rate of their businesses. I worked morning, noon, and night to help get these programs up and running, both with our federal delegation, with the legislature, both the House and Senate, communicating with various chambers, business organizations, etc. And still doing so to navigate the process with folks. I can't speak enough to the benefit that that's been for our small, medium, and large size businesses. Now, what could we have done better? Quickly, I am just going to agree with Senator Bray. The Department of Labor situation, identifying the antiquated equipment and computer systems that they're working with, is an obvious negative that we need to address as soon as we have the ability and the resources to do so.
Thank you, Matt. Tim Buskey. Tim, you with us? You're on mute still.
My answer again?
Please.
Governor Scott did an extremely good job with his press conferences, almost daily press conferences. The Department of Health, which I still have a connection with, did almost daily calls to us, keeping us updated on the progress of the pandemic, the updates of what to do, how to handle ourselves in the pandemic. Were incredible. And I got to give a lot of credit to the governor and to the Department of Health in both of those areas. It offered a transparency which we haven't seen in government for a long time. A transparency that serves as a model, I think can be a model for us in the future. What can we do that's better? We can all respond better. We can pay attention to the distancing, and we can pay attention to the masking and actually get it done.
Great, thank you, Tim. And thank you all for the insightful comments for that question. Before we get to the next question, for all of you listening and viewing at home, if you have a question that you want submitted towards the end of this presentation here in this forum, please respond to the question and answer, and your question may be chosen for the candidates for the 8th through 10th question. So please do. The next question will be addressed first by Steve Thurston, and I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. This is the question, and it will be Steve Thurston. The question is this: Vermont's economy relies heavily on industries that are climate dependent. Think maple sugaring, skiing, for example. Do you have a long-term economic vision for Vermont as climate change threatens these in other sectors? Steve.
Well, I think the long-term economic plan that's will unfold for Vermont doesn't have so much to do with climate, because I don't believe that we're seeing climate change happening at a rate that really changes things for the foreseeable future in Vermont. But what Vermont's economy needs, obviously, is jobs. And we need to retain the workforce that grows up here, try to convince people that after they've taken a couple years off to see the world, when they come back, they need to be able to find jobs. And one of the things that I can relate to, having been a builder, is that people that learn a trade, oftentimes motivated individuals especially, can learn a trade, work for somebody for a period of time, and then become entrepreneurs and have a business that becomes one of the small businesses that's the lifeblood of Vermont's economy. So I don't think it has very much to do with the climate. I think it has more to do with the legislature making sure that they don't put up roadblocks to those types of economic opportunities that await people that have a desire to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Birong.
Yes, thank you. So obviously tourism is a massive part of our economic viability and health in Vermont. As climate change impacts ski, maple, things of that nature, you know, we really don't have a ton of control over that. So it's how do we look at things maybe a little bit differently? I helped found, as a result of COVID, I helped found an organization called the Independent Restaurant Coalition. It's about 190 restaurants and hospitality owners and operations throughout the state. Now, one of the things we're talking about doing in this very same vein is how do we utilize our food systems as a tourism draw that will help draw people from the outside. We are recognized nationally, if not internationally, as one of the origin points of the farm to table localized food movement. So how do we use beer, cheesemakers, the farms the restaurants use to produce this as sort of like an interactive tourism concept, and then use this state to help us market this and target it throughout the country and the region.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Diane Lanpher.
Thank you. So this has been a changing question, but you know, I've been in there long enough and been part of our community where we have been looking at the change over time. But I tell you that the most important thing to do on the economic plan is to retain our ability in Vermont, which I believe that we work hard to do, in being self-reliant. And that's one of the hallmarks. It's one of the reasons why also we're doing as well as we are with COVID, is because we're very self-reliant and we help each other. And what I mean by that is also in the energy sector. The more that we can be able to create our own energy, keep those dollars that are here that we send out of our state, within our state, and be self-reliant on our energy, the better that we're going to have our economic well-being. And that I'll also agree with Matt, is on food. We're able to feed ourselves and add that value product to our clean environment, that our products are trusted, and innovation. And I'll end with that. We are great innovators in this state.
Thank you, Diane. Tim Buskey.
Yes, I guess one of my key priorities in rebuilding the economy in Vermont is looking very thoughtfully and realistically at budget goals and where we need to go, and try to do that without any tax increases. Examine the spending. It's a long-term economic growth program that we're looking at, and we were in this economic difficulty before the pandemic anyway, so we have to go way back to find a place where we can redo what we've set in place before. We're driving some small business out of Vermont. We need to bring it in. We need some incentives to bring the entrepreneurial spirit back that made Vermont great. And we are blessed with great farms, and we are blessed with the Working Lands Enterprise grants that have been extremely successful in the state. And we want to see those continued into the future.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Jon Christiano. You still on mute, John?
Sorry, I'll get this straight yet. Long-term economics for Vermont. We do rely heavily on some of our traditional industries, skiing and maple sugaring, but these aren't going to carry us indefinitely. We need more small industries, and that's what I would do everything I possibly could to encourage the incorporation of small industries, local industries into our communities. Small engine assembly, electronic circuit board assembly. These are things that can be done almost anywhere. They don't require huge factories. People could leave their home, maybe walk or drive a short distance instead of a long commute, get to their job place, put in a day's work, and go home to their families. And I think that's the key to the future for Vermont.
Great. Thank you, John. Chris Bray.
Thanks. I'm going to return to some themes I started with earlier. So Farm to Plate is all about rebuilding our food and agricultural economy. And while it's under stress from markets as well as natural phenomenon, it's good to be resilient, to have more programs, more products, more ways of adopting and responding. That also includes forestry, which is 78% of Vermont is forested. There are a lot of forests in Addison County as well. And the same side, related to climate change, we're trying to move from fossil fuels, which are damaging, to a clean energy economy. It's creating jobs as we generate clean energy here, as well as save energy through our efficiency programs. Efficiency Vermont is known nationally and internationally. And then on clean water, which is also stressed by heavier, more intense rains, we're looking at Vermont in spending $2 billion over 20 years building better clean water infrastructure. That's Vermonters doing that work here at home.
Thank you, Chris. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. One of the things that I have worked on in the Agriculture Committee is ensuring ways that our farm and forestry businesses can be more resilient and diversified. In the face of COVID, farms that were able to pivot their operations quickly were able to really survive much more thoroughly throughout this pandemic. And I think that is true for climate change too. So resiliency and adaptation will be important. And clean energy jobs, as Senator Bray mentioned, are also important focus. The other thing that we need to do is obviously address climate change, and we are incredibly well poised to do so now that we have passed the Global Warming Solutions Act, which is actually legislation that establishes a plan in order to address climate change and reduce our emissions in Vermont. So both having resilient businesses and a plan for mitigating climate change are important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Peter Briggs.
We first are going to have to get the tourist industry back before we can lose it again. This shutdown and pandemic's done more to devastate the industry than a few warm winters have so far. People are very creative at figuring out solutions to problems. We were doing across the country a lot of renewable energy till along came fracking, and now you can't give oil away during a shutdown. You have to pay for people to take it off your hands. So we were supposed to be running out of oil, and now we got more than enough for at least 30 years plus. So when it comes time that the climate zones are moving north, people will find answers. In a crisis, people always find a way.
Great, thank you, Peter. This next question will start with Chris Bray, and the question is this. Last week, 7 Days ran an article asking, has Phil Scott made Vermont more affordable? No matter what your answer to the question might be, it's clear from the article that we all have different ideas about what affordable means and how we achieve it. The question is this, what does an affordable Vermont look like to you, and how do we get there? Chris.
That's a great question, and a challenging question. You know, I think for me, the foundation of an affordable Vermont is that when you work full-time, 40 hours a week, that you should be able to live a decent life. You should be able to have health care that you can count on. You should be able to afford, if you have children, that you can get your kids into childcare so that you're able to work. And then if you have any medical needs, that they should be able to be addressed. So we've worked on these issues through the legislature with a higher minimum wage, which the governor has opposed. And we've also looked at family medical leave, which the governor has opposed. And we also, I think, have an opportunity in terms of universal primary care to ensure that people can get the care they need when they need it. We could talk a lot more about this one. Sorry, we're out of time.
Thank you, Chris. Peter Briggs.
To me, an affordable Vermont is not having to pay rent to the town for your home to the tune of $10,000, now $11,000 a year. Property tax burden is a significant problem. Being able to keep what you own, what you work for, is important. The best definition I've heard is that a fine is a tax for doing wrong, but taxes are fines for doing right. It's important that Vermonters are able to keep what they earn. But also, you need jobs that actually produce something. It's important that we have industrial type jobs that actually provide good income and services in exchange. During the shutdown, we've seen that there's been a lot more currency pumped into the situation, but everybody's gone home and quit working and there's less goods. This is going to cause inflation, which is going to hurt a lot of the low income.
Thank you, Peter. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. I would agree with much of what Senator Bray said. I believe that we have to look at affordability from the perspective of working Vermonters and families to make sure that we have affordable health care through universal primary care, paid family leave, and a livable wage and benefits for all workers. During the pandemic, the Senate focused very strongly early on creating hazard pay for essential workers who are on the front lines of the pandemic, most of whom are women, healthcare workers, grocery store workers, etc. And we need to make sure that we have equitable wages for men and women, and that we approach our economy through the lens of equality, both from a gender perspective and also a racial perspective, that wages are equal depending on for workers across the board. So focus on families and workers when we're talking about affordability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Jon Christiano. John, I think it's that pesky mute button again.
Okay, sorry about that. Hard to train an old dog. Affordability, Vermont's always been a wonderful place to live. It's been a beautiful place, but it's sometimes been a hard place to live. We lost one of our biggest industries in the form of IBM when the then current administration almost literally drove them out of the state, and it hasn't been able to. We haven't been able to find somebody to fill that gap. I don't disagree with access to good health care. I think everybody should have that, but I don't think I should have to pay for it for other people. I work really hard during my lifetime and my working career to get better jobs so that I could have better health coverage, and I'd like to see everybody else encouraged to do the same thing. Affordability, again, falls to taxes, and taxes, in my opinion, property taxes go to schools. We need to really do something about that.
Thank you, John. Matt Birong.
Yeah, thank you. So with affordability, I mean, I'm gonna pivot back to the housing conversation again. Reworking regulations and how the state interacts with development in certain areas that have the appropriate infrastructure to speed up the process. It'll provide more housing stock, expand the tax base. I went over that before. I think that is extremely important. The less cost into the home build itself or the apartments, whatever you're referring to, obviously that cost can reflect in the rental price of the purchase price. Now also with the investing in a healthy and happy workforce. I mean, I have employees that have been working with me for 7, 8, 10 plus years, and people always ask me, how do I achieve that level of retention in an industry that's notoriously has high turnover? And I constantly say that I invest in them because a happy, healthy workforce has higher productivity. You have less expenses in training because there's no turnover, and they're far more efficient in their jobs. So if we can help shepherd policies that will sort of like hit this sort of total overarching concept, I think it'll show a great impact on the state as a whole.
Thank you, Matt. Tim Buskey.
Yeah, affordability, and what does it look like? It looks like we've returned local control to Vermont, to our schools and our taxes and the things that we have to pay as being part of our community. Local control is important. It shouldn't be based in Montpelier, but returned, or based in districts, but returned to the state, to the communities. Healthcare that's affordable is very important. We could do some investing in small business, encouraging small business to come in, providing jobs and reasonable income to those who need it in Vermont. And it's all done not through taxes and regulation, but through incentives to perform and to bring those kinds of things back into Vermont.
Thank you, Tim. Diane Lanpher.
There we go. Thank you. So I've had a couple of seconds here to take a look at this, and I would echo much of what I've just heard from everybody speaking. If we want to know what affordability looks like, we ask the people, we ask the families, we ask the workers, we ask the industry, and that's where we're getting the feedback is, and I'll echo with others, that the housing costs, where people have to live and drive to work, food, having access to nutritious food. I don't think we even begin to understand how deprived and how under food insecurities there are in our state right now. And we get there: retirement, safety, healthcare. These are all indicators. Look at those progress indicators as to what's a healthy community. Taxes are for paying for those things that we have a common shared goal for. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Steve Thurston.
This is a great question, and I think we need to define affordability. And to me, affordability is when your income and your expenses are close enough together that you don't have a problem. And there's no, I don't think there's any guarantee that affordability is something that you're entitled to, but everybody has to be, to a degree, self-sufficient and make decisions, smart decisions that keep their expenses in line with their incomes. Now, there's a lot that Vermont can do to reduce the cost of taxes. The per pupil cost of education is one of the highest in the country. The idea that we can reduce our energy costs by going to renewables, I think, is really foolish, because renewables are basically require you to pay twice for your electricity. Once for the electricity that the renewables are producing, and once for the electricity that the reliable generators are getting paid, whether they're producing it or not, because they can't go out of business. We need them to be there when the wind stops blowing and the sun goes over the mountain. So yeah, I think affordability is more of a question of balance than of the state creating the idea of affordability. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Before we get on to the next question, we're about 5 questions in of the predetermined questions. There's 2 more questions left. And audience, you're not going to get out of this lightly. I've seen 1 question come in, but please pose your questions under the Q&A there. And we may choose that question to let the candidates tackle that. So please participate. Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Peter Briggs. And the question is this: the coronavirus pandemic has a detrimental effect on mental health and well-being of our community. What will you do to ensure that our state's designated mental health agencies have the resources necessary to meet the mental health needs of our residents? Actually, I'm sorry, Peter, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, it's going to be important to step in and actually understand how the system works and make sure it's working efficiently. I don't believe just throwing dollars at it is going to ever solve problems, because you can always throw dollars down a wishing well, and that doesn't mean you're going to get your wish. So I'd have a lot to learn in that area, but the important thing would be making sure that it functions. There's also, I think, a lot that communities could do to help support friends and family. Probably educating too people who aren't mentally disturbed would be beneficial to help them. You know, they may not be able to do a lot, but any little bit that they could do to help those that need it could be of significant help. So that I'm sure that there is answers to this problem if we sit down and think about it. And that's one that I came up with off the top of my head. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Jon Christiano.
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned the last forum, I spent a lot of time looking around people that I know and associate with for different ways that I can help them and help the community. I'm very much in favor of that. And I think that's one of the keys out of these problems is supporting our neighbors, our friends, our family, and not relying so heavily on the state, on the government to do this for us. It's something that we need to step up to the plate and take charge of it ourselves.
Thank you, Jon. Chris Bray.
Thank you. I think I wanted to look at this question from 2 ways. One is in terms of pure mental health work that we have in the state, services such as Counseling Service of Addison County, and they're a foundational resource for Addison County folks, but they also have outreach in local communities. And so we have to keep those programs running and strong and flexible. And I know that people have been working to do telemeetings as well as safe meetings. The other thing, though, that goes hand in hand with it, which has already been mentioned, is community work. So we've had numerous citizen-based, spontaneously formed citizen resilience groups that have stepped up and helped make sure that neighbors have food, that they're seeing someone, that they're not, particularly elders who may not have someone else checking on them. So we need formal service, and then we need community service, neighbor to neighbor.
Thank you, Chris. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. At the beginning of the pandemic, one of the first agencies I reached out to make sure that they were able to continue their work was the Counseling Service of Addison County. Since they were on the front line of this pandemic, the pandemic increased the isolation that we see, particularly in the more rural areas of our county. Some of the most important work that they do is supported housing, to make sure that people who really need supported services are cared for in affordable housing. They also do a lot of work in our schools and and work with our domestic violence agencies. I think on underscoring the partnerships that we have across the county with the Counseling Service of Addison County and other nonprofit organizations. One of the things that the legislature did a few years ago and we need to do more of is increase the wages and benefits of frontline mental health workers. This is key to making sure that these agencies across our state can deliver the services they need to. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ruth. Matt Birong.
Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned in my opening statement, I sit on the Board of Counseling Services of Addison County. So a subject like this is very important to me and very dear to me. So what can we do, right? I agree with Senator Hardy that one of the things we need to do is support the people who work there with solid wages. We need to be able to invest in them to make sure that first and foremost, like they are in a healthy and stable place as the individuals engaging with those who are seeking help. Now, those who are seeking help, this is where the state can help. They need to understand that the help exists. We need to help them invest in an outreach so those who have an identified need know how to contact us or we can contact them. We also need to help as COVID is understood more, how the impacts both with one's physical health and mental health, how those may vary and how there are different ways of engaging and helping the person through whatever aspects of therapy and outreach. It's really all about looking at a holistic way of making sure that we truly do take care of our county and our areas most vulnerable.
Thank you, Matt. Diane Lanpher.
Thank you. So I would say two things are off the top. I would agree with what people have others said, but supporting our DAs and our SSAs, that's our designated agencies, and our local one here in Addison County is was mentioned, the counseling service. I sit in the budget committee, and year after year after year, I sit and visit with these areas of the budget. As one of my designated places is Dale, which is Department of Aging and Independent Living. So I see this and work this really almost every day firsthand. We have not been able to keep up with being able to pay the rates that I believe that in order to keep that business going for the services that we ask them to achieve. And it is very much bare to the bones. The other thing is training and education, because competing for resources for talent is tough. And as you know, within nursing environment, but when you have to spend $30,000 on education and you cannot even make that much in a year in mental health, there's something wrong that we need to take care of. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. Tim Buskey.
I think that some of the things we can do to address the resources that we have are, first of all, reevaluate the current system that we have in place, look for savings in health insurance, check on neighbors, for us to check on neighbors to neighbor, encourage volunteerism in our own areas, coordinate state agencies with local and regional nonprofits. We know we have a lot of local nonprofits, and we know there's state agencies out there that can work with them so that we can identify where help is and what help we need in the area.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Steve Thurston.
Well, I think one of the things that we can do is really concentrate on trying to get the economy working again, because not working leads to mental crises. I do believe that Addison County has a great network in place. It would be a good idea, I think, to maybe advertise more for the counseling services that are available. And if possible, I would think it might be a good idea if we could get volunteers to man lifelines. A lot of times I think it's just somebody needs a phone call on a regular basis, and they just need somebody to talk to get them through that tough night. So to the extent, and I think Tim mentioned volunteerism would be an important part of that. We do need to take care of each other. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Steve. All right, so the next question, we're through that one. The question is this, and this is going to be posed first to Diane Lanpher, The question is this: do you support establishing a paid family leave system in Vermont? If so, how would you fund such a system? Diane.
Thank you. This is something that we have been wrestling with in the legislature and have not quite got it over the finish line just yet. There are a variety of ways in order to achieve this, but number one, I do support it. It is something that our families have asked for, businesses have asked for. This is an insurance policy that helps with childcare if you're out for maternity leave, and or if you want to take care of a sick relative or somebody that's home, that you don't have to quit your job in order to do that. Paying for that is there's a couple ways. You could split it with your employer, or you can pay it 100% by the employee. Currently, I believe we had it in there as an employee-based insurance policy, and I think that's where we would go first. An employer would have the choice if they would like to pick it up as a part of what they could do, but I think first we go with the people who want it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Matt Birong.
Yes, thank you. This is a piece of policy that actually got me into policy work, legislation. I was an advocate of this as a board member of Main Street Alliance for years. I think I'm actually going into about my 5th year of advocating for this policy. So I totally do support this. I support funding this through a payroll line item. Although the totality of it looks like is a very large number. It is really, when you look at the breakdown for your average Vermonter, a couple of $100 a year for an insurance program. Now, when you take a look at the demographics that find this favorable, it's the same demographics that we're trying to target, attract, and draw to Vermont. These are 45 and under, 40-year-old and under working families that see that a program like this really does support them in their ability to have families. So as we are in a regional sort of tussle to attract and draw these demographics in, I see this as a flagship piece of policy that tells them and supports them that Vermont is open for business for working families.
Thank you. Steve Thurston.
I think with, excuse me, with the budget deficit that we're facing, the idea that we could consider these types of additional taxes, I think is really wrong-headed. My information says that we're looking at a $450 million hole in this upcoming budget year. And so I don't think we should be looking at any programs that increase taxes. The relationship between employees and employers, I think, is a sacred one, and I don't think the state should get involved with that any more than is absolutely necessary. That's what I have to say about that.
Great, thank you. Tim Buskey.
Paid family leave as an option, as an insurance option for employees. If they would like to buy that paid family leave insurance, and there is a way that insurance companies can provide it without it becoming a state program, that's the ideal situation. But employees should be able to buy. Employers will need to buy the insurance too if this kind of a program gets going, because the employers, as small business people, were required to continue having the staff on hand during that paid family leave, and we're required to rehire the person when they come back from their paid family leave. So it's very important to watch the cost that we're shifting to small business.
Great, thank you, Tim. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. I absolutely support a paid family leave program and was a co-sponsor of this legislation. I agree with much of what, or all of what Representative Birong said about this. It was one of the things that got me into the legislature as well, and agree that it should be paid for through a payroll line item. paid family, as a mother of 3 children who never had a paid maternity leave, and now a daughter of an elderly mother who I'm caring for in my own home, this type of legislation is crucial for working families to be able to afford to live in Vermont. It's part of the affordability picture. It also is a program that promotes healthier children who have parents who are able to stay home with them in their early years, and also supports our elders in our community as an aging Vermonters. It's a key piece of that. And it also promotes gender equity in the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Bray.
Thanks, Shawn. I would reiterate what Senator Hardy has just laid out in a very orderly way. There are a lot of good reasons for this. And when people worry, I think that we need to pause and realize that today, we would never want to give up on things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, where we've created programs that bring security to people across the board and improve the quality of their lives. So from an economic development point of view, I know many small business owners who say that if the state were to be behind offering this, we would have a large pool of people participating, and it would bring down costs for all businesses and give them an advantage in attracting the kind of workforce they're looking for. And then from the affordability standpoint, again, when you have to choose between being sick or and losing your paycheck, it's a poor choice to make, whether it's for you, your children, or one of your parents who you may need to take care of.
Thank you. Jon Christiano.
Yeah, thank you. I think I've actually got my mic on this time, so here I go. Paid family leave. I'm going to go back to what I said in previous forums about a prepaid tax plan or tax set aside between an employee and an employer's, but basically with the emphasis being on the employee to provide the funding. They're going to have to pay it in most cases anyway. If they set the money aside tax-free, it keeps the emphasis on them and the responsibility for a personal decision that they made, and that I didn't and I should not have to pay for. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Briggs.
In order for me to be able to share my wealth with somebody else, they have to be helping to generate it. If they aren't here providing the services that I need to generate this wealth, I can't pass it on to them. It's that simple. It's very simple economics. So I don't support this because it's not sustainable. I can't afford to pay people to stay home. I'm in a commodity business for the last 5 years has had negative margins. We're living on debt. This is not sustainable either. So if you want an affordable Vermont, it's policies like this that have got to be abandoned. Otherwise, employers are going to go places where we can be sustainable. Like I said, this is simple economics.
Thank you. All right. This is the last forum question before we start taking questions from the audience, and they are rolling in, so thank you. This question is going to be addressed first by Matt Birong. And again, if you'd like to submit any questions, please do so through the Q&A, and we will consider those. So the question is this: a good job provides for an employee's basic needs, such as pay and benefits, as well as an employee's higher needs, such as meaningfulness and personal growth. If elected, what would you do to support the creation of more good jobs in Addison County? Matt.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things I think we can do to support the growth of better jobs in Addison County is getting back to the ability to get them up and running in a quicker way, right? I'm an advocate for programs that help take an interested party you know, Vermont has this amazing tradition and culture of entrepreneurship. You take a look at like Burton Snowboards, Ben & Jerry's, things of that nature. So we identify those smaller businesses or even those concepts, right? And we really help them find their way to location siting, navigating, you know, either the loan process, how to source investors, things of that nature. Especially now that there's some really bizarre opportunities for Vermont with COVID, right? We've got a lot of people moving here. They're young, they're smart, they're technically savvy. So how do we get these people, you know, investing in our tech schools, our trades programs at our schools, bringing back things like industrial arts, trades, etc. I think all of those pieces are connected in achieving the goal and the question that you just asked.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Steve Thurston.
What I've heard traveling around the Addison 3 district is that, and visiting with a lot of small businesses, is that in order for them to thrive and be able to offer good jobs and create additional good jobs, they need to have lower taxes, less regulation, and for the state to really get out of their way more than think that the state has a role to play in helping create these jobs. I think that the entrepreneurial spirit in Vermont is sufficient to create jobs if there are not impediments placed in the way by the state. An example would be a bake shop that opened on Route 7 not too long ago, ran into so many problems with the state and their licensing and permitting that it almost became impossible for them. So we need to be a lot more streamlined in the permitting processes so that these businesses that are the lifeblood of Addison County can get up to speed quickly and not run into a cobweb of state regulations. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Diane Lanpher.
Thank you. Thank you. So first thing that popped in my head when you said creating new jobs. First of all, government rarely gets in the business of actually creating jobs. We support industries that actually create the jobs. And those industries are telling us repeatedly, no matter who they are and where they are, and I've heard from whether it's Main Street or larger industries, what they need is people. There's no shortage of jobs in Vermont. We have a shortage of actually being able to fill those jobs and having qualified people to be able to fill them. So focusing on education and what industry is needing in that, I do believe back to renewable energy, innovation. The chamber has come to us and said their number one was that they need housing. The people that they want to hire can't find housing. Infrastructure. Our Vergennes economic corridor is something that I believe that we can focus on to actually help to create that economic plan. And I can't wait for the train to open.
Thank you. Tim Buskey.
I can't wait for the train either. I would say that the ideal situation here would be lower taxes, less regulation for small business. Leave us alone as small business and let us go ahead and find ways to be entrepreneurs. I think we can form partnerships with Technical Education Center to provide some more workers for us. I'm speaking from my experience in caregiving. We always had jobs available, always. There was not a time when we wouldn't consider hiring folks. And our response was to raise the hourly rates, to offer health insurance to all employees, to offer paid time off, to offer sick time, and that's how it happens. The competition's out there for those few employees that we have, but Diane's right. We've got plenty of jobs. We just don't have people to fill them.
Thank you, Tim. Jon Christiano.
Yes, thank you. I think one of the biggest problems we suffered with in Vermont for quite a few years is attracting good paying jobs to the entire state, not only Addison County, but there seems to be an anti-business attitude in the state government. And I'm going to point to the Howard Dean driving IBM out of the state and back to New York, the General Electric Corporation closing down the National Cash Register right here in the Middlebury-Rutland area. Can't keep driving these people away without encouraging them to stay if we want to have good paying jobs in this area.
Thank you, John. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. I would agree with Representative Lanpher that this issue is not about jobs, it's about workers. We don't have enough workers in our state to fill even the very best jobs that we have here. But if we are looking at job creation, we need to focus on our strengths, and some of the strengths that we have in Addison County are focused on diversified agriculture and food systems, clean energy, and outdoor recreation and tourism. It's also important not to forget that our 3 largest employers in the county are all in education and healthcare: Middlebury College, Porter Hospital, and our local public school systems. So we can't forget about supporting education and healthcare as a way of creating and sustaining jobs. Our nonprofit sector, as we've already mentioned, like CSAC and other organizations, create very good jobs, as well as our arts and cultural organizations like the Town Hall Theater and the Vergennes Opera House and our public libraries. We need to focus on education and training through CCV and Vermont State Colleges and other organizations as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ruth. Chris Bray.
You know, there is only one Vermont, and I firmly believe that when we celebrate our unique strengths, we position ourselves for our strongest economic future. And when I look around, I see what's not just the opportunities, but a track record that we have in terms of things that we build that are place-based businesses. So again, farm to plate with the food and ag economy, forestry, and including new aspects of forestry, including energy and biomass. On top of that, we have, and in the farm and food economy, we've added 7,700 jobs, 842 new businesses, over 110 million in new income. In the clean energy economy, we have people weatherizing and people also doing clean energy generation. That's over 18,000 jobs in the state, paying good wages. And again, and outdoor recreation goes hand in hand. We're doing work on that as well this year with improving trails regulation.
Thank you, Chris. Peter Briggs.
I've talked about taxes, and well, they certainly put friction on one's ability to accumulate and spread wealth around. Something that is even more egregious is regulations. There's been studies that have studied states with low taxes, low regulation burden, all the way up to high taxes, high regulation burden. And it was found that the states with a high tax burden were actually better off than states with a high regulatory burden. This is a very simple explanation because, well, taxes are a burden often to any business, let alone ones that operate on thin margins. At least that money can be spent on things that go back into improving infrastructure or something like that, so it can come around. However, Vermont is also very numerous in this, and the amount of regulations that absolutely shut down your ability to generate wealth. This is an important thing we have to reverse if we're going to survive as a state economically for everybody.
Great, thank you, Peter. All right, just what you've been waiting for, the audience participation portion of this evening in the forum. And right now, if we were in a baseball game, it'd be the 7th inning stretch. And if we were in Boston, we'd be singing Sweet Caroline. So luckily enough, that is not the audience participation I'm speaking of. You did step up, audience, and we do have some questions. So the first question from the audience is going to be addressed to Jon Christiano. And the question is actually a couple questions in one. But the question is this. There is, and this is coming from Robert in Vergennes, there is current science data that suggests that the Earth is actually cooling in spite of the current warming trend. If and when the warming spike ends, how would you propose to return to reliable energy resources? Which energy resources would you choose? And how would you promote and fund these changes? Jon Christiano.
Okay, thank you. I love this question because it's one of the hot topics of the day. I categorically disagree with most of the current thoughts about this, especially around Vermont. I believe that the Earth is going through a cycle that it's gone through for thousands of years. There's nothing new about it, and I don't think there's very much we can do to change it or stop it. I do think that we have tremendous reserves of coal that were laid down during the flood, Noah's flood, the Great Flood, and that's what I would go back to. It's and I believe we have the technical ability, if we applied ourselves, to clean it, to scrub it, the emissions that come out of it. So that's where I would go, coal.
Thank you, Jon. Peter Briggs.
Years ago, as a kid, I went to the Echo, and they had a display that showed once Vermont was under 2 miles of ice, however many thousands of years ago. And interestingly, somehow that all melted without us living our modern fossil fuel lifestyles. As far as what the weather's going to do, it's going to do it, I'm pretty sure. And how are we going to respond to it? Like I said, I don't believe in Malthusian beliefs that believes there's a limited piece of the pie, because I believe in the anti-Malthusian beliefs that believe the greatest asset in this world is the human brain that will adapt to most anything, and they'll find answers. So how are we going to look going into the future? The people of the United States and Vermont will find the answer. You know, we have reduced an awful lot of CO2 emission. We've switched to natural gas over coal. Well, the rest of the world is actually going to coal. A lot of the people who signed on to the Paris Climate Peace Accord are actually emitting more now than they were in the past, and we're going down. So the people will find an answer.
Thank you, Peter. Chris Bray.
So the science in terms of climate change, I'd say, is really indisputable. There are roughly 97% of scientists around the world have come to an agreement that as you burn more fuel, as you send more greenhouse gases up into the air, you increase the greenhouse gas effect, which is pretty straightforward. When you get in your car on a cold, sunny day, why is it so hot in your car or much warmer? It's because of that greenhouse effect. CO2 emitted does the same thing. We're altering through human activity the planet's health in a way that we've never seen before. There's so to be prudent, we should stop emitting carbon dioxide in that way. And the good news is that developing a clean energy economy actually employs people, keeps money here, and creates good paying jobs. So whether you believe in the environmental side of it or not, there's a powerful economic opportunity for Vermont to move to clean fuels.
Thank you, Chris. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. I agree with Senator Bray. Climate scientists agree that the climate is changing and the Earth is warming. They're nearly unanimous in that belief, and 2020 has seen a record high temperatures, and I believe 4 of the months this year as evidence of this happening. Each year we're getting warmer and warmer, and we're seeing effects across the globe with more turbulent weather, including the wildfires in California that have just been incredibly devastating to our entire country. So I would stay with our focus on increasing the use of clean energy sources such as solar, as Senator Bray said, and wind and thermal energy, and also creating greater efficiencies here in Vermont in our transportation and our thermal heating. So absolutely, that climate change is real.
Thank you, Ruth. Steve Thurston.
I think this Global Warming Solutions Act shows you how extreme the current legislature, supermajority legislature, has become on this whole energy issue. The idea that there should be an unelected panel that is determining our energy future and determining the cost of energy and how we're going to use energy in the future without our elected representatives being responsible for those choices so that the voters can control it, I think is just abominable. The idea that the legislature has actually invited people to sue the state if Vermont does not reach its zero carbon footprint goals fast enough is astonishing to me. So that said, what we really need to do is create a market-based approach to our energy, and whichever form of energy is the cheapest is going to be the best thing for Vermont, because no matter what Vermont does, it's not going to have an effect on the climate. And it's what, as I mentioned earlier, all of this renewable energy is just costing us extra. Whatever it costs for the renewable energy, just add that to your electric bill. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Tim Buskey.
It's a difficult question because there's a lot of practices that we've already done to get us further on down the road toward not using the traditional kinds of energy that we have. There's some scientific information out there now, studies out there that indicate that reduction or increase in CO2 comes before global warming, not global warming causing raising CO2, but the two things are crossing paths. So we're really not sure where that is coming from. But developing those reliable energy sources, returning them to the cheapest and best, evaluating what we have and what we can get to, and really getting back to it being our responsibility to determine.
Great, thank you, Tim. Chris, do you have a rebuttal of sorts?
Yes, please. I'd just like to respond a little bit on the Global Warming Solutions Act. I think it's a misconception, mischaracterization of it to call a citizens panel writing the new laws for the state. We regularly use commissions to provide information to the legislature. They are drafting a plan, but the state government, A&R, will be writing any rules that follow on it, and the plan will be presented to the legislature, and all rules come back before the legislature. So there's no abdication of responsibility. It's simply a panel convened to bring best ideas forward.
Thank you, Chris. All right, back to the question. Diane Lanpher.
Thank you. So there's been a lot of changes on this, and I think we should also take stock in the fact that Vermont has come a long way in the last 20 years, although we could still go a lot farther, which is why we are very strongly supporting some of the efforts, and one of them in particular was the Global Warming Solutions Act, which I'm one of the co-sponsors of this year and in the previous year, although this year it was a much better bill. Also, there are other opportunities besides that with the TCI, which Vermont and other states are not quite ready to go forward with, that would create that kind of market base. We're still looking at that. That one's not ready for prime time. But saving money is a good thing. And if you can save money with renewable energy and create grid jobs, and at the same time possibly help with the climate change, there is no downside to that. Taking no action has a very big risk of our demise in that. But by taking action, it saves money, it creates jobs, and might be helping the environment and all of us to live long, or my grandchildren to live in a better world.
Thank you, Diane. Matt Birong.
Yeah, thank you, Shawn. So I just want to say that I echo what Senator Bray said regarding the science surrounding climate change. It's irrefutable. 97% of scientists agree that's where we're at. That's what's happening. As far as reliable energy, I just want to just point out that there's really nothing more reliable than the sun rising, the wind blowing, and that water currents exist. So how do we as innovative humans who are looking at this challenge find more efficient ways to capture that, store it, and distribute it to our citizens, right? Somebody said earlier that people will find the answer. I totally agree with that. That's why I agree that there is methods, science, a tremendous amount of private investment going into this, and some of the best minds in the world have recognized that this is a problem, here is a goal, and now within pieces of policy like the Global Warming Solutions Act, we are now organizing a lot of the things that we have, assessing how they're working, and setting forward with a long-term, long-range plan to actually achieve these things instead of doing a bunch of fractured one-off policies.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. So we're going to address the second audience question here, and that's going to be addressed first by Diane. And the question is this, and this comes to us, let me just cue this up here, from Jane Spencer. There has been a lot of discussion about keeping schools local in Addison, the Addison Northwest District, and the suggestion of school choice has been introduced by some candidates. The question, do you support school choice? How would school choice affect the most vulnerable in our communities? Diane.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane. To the extent that school choice is something that we have currently in our system, both in Vermont and within our particular own district, that you can choose to go within your district to any one of the elementary schools. This is something that we have. There are communities in Vermont that don't have an actual school building, and they have tuition out and you have choice. I think it was a little bit of a surprise to the legislature to find out that your tax dollars and that choice was going to was going to a school in Sweden or outside of Vermont. And that was a little concerning to us, and that we had a discussion around that. The vulnerability is a tough answer, or is a tough situation when you have school districts or possibly schools that are not set up to take certain maybe special needs students. Sorry, I'm going to go over just a tad in time. When it's an expense, so that has to be looked at. But I would say that for school choice, I am very much in favor of looking at a county-wide. We can start to have that conversation of actually within the county. Thank you. I won't take any more time.
Thank you, Diane. Matt Birong.
Yeah, thank you. So right now, with the rollout of the unified districts, the conversation around school choice, there's a lot I think we need to understand about what happened over the last several years. We're starting to see what like a multi-year trajectory looks like. I totally understand and respect the anxiety that's created for people in the community and statewide. So as we're starting to realize this, I think we do need to take a hard look at a bunch of varying plans, including school choice, and then put them all together at one point and really do like a deep dive, really high level overview, and see which ones are better for individualized districts, regions, counties, towns themselves. I believe it's not a one size fits all policy.
Great, thank you. Steve Thurston.
I think the idea that one school is going to serve the needs of all the students is wrong-headed. In my experience on 3 different school boards, the best schools are the ones that are mission-driven to achieve not only academic success, but also character development, personal discipline, social responsibility, and awareness of cultural differences. It takes community involvement to forge the partnerships between teachers, students, and parents that lead to good educational outcomes and agreements on curriculum and budgets. But the pandemic has created a crisis in our schools and forced changes in the way that we do things. We should be open to a variety of educational arrangements and be prepared to allocate resources in an equitable manner to all providers. So that does take in the idea that we should have school choice, homeschooling, more collaborative work even in neighborhoods to provide education. I think are things that we need to consider when we're looking at what's happening with this current school year. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Tim Buskey.
Yeah, I absolutely support school choice, obviously, especially with the money following the students, so that parents can continue to afford to send their children to the schools that they wish to send them to. I hope to find a solution in the legislature to the difficulties that have been created with Act 46, particularly the continuing increases in school property taxes that we are suffering and closing of our community schools, in my community especially. Legislature should commit to determining the results of the consolidation district by district so that we know exactly what happened. We still don't know why millions and millions of dollars are being taxed to us in this town. To leave a town without the center of education in the community, that's economically irresponsible. Addison is suffering from that. Potential new homeowners regularly examine educational services in the town and the process of relocation, and people aren't going to relocate to a town that doesn't have a school.
Thank you, Tim. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. I support strong, well-funded, equitable public schools. That is what I support. And as a member of the Senate Education Committee, we have worked to create more equity and more access in our own public schools. We all have a responsibility and a stake to ensure that every child gets an excellent education regardless of where they live. One of the focuses that we started on this year before the pandemic was a look at adjusting our public school finance system to ensure that school districts that have high levels of students in poverty, students who are English language learners, and students in very rural areas are able to have the funding in their schools that are necessary. And I wouldn't want to do anything to detract from the work of our public schools. We need to work together across town boundaries to make sure that all of our students are served. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ruth. Chris Bray.
I'm glad we're having a chance to talk about education a little bit. You know, in a democratic society, schools are the greatest creators of opportunity, and we live in a fast-changing global economy, and we need to offer every Vermonter a world-class education. When we talk about stresses on local schools, I think more than school choice, we talk about schools being kept open or closed, and sometimes we're talking about school sizes. I think one of the things that we should distinguish between is the size of the facilities, small schools in each town, versus the size of the administrative structure. I think we have the ability to consolidate at the administrative level while still keeping small schools and helping them have stronger, broader programs with art, music, and foreign language. We have opportunities to reduce administrative costs and share teachers across schools. And the ultimate driver for me for making decisions about how we run our schools has to be equality to provide the best possible education to every Vermont child.
Thank you, Chris. Jon Christiano.
Yes, thank you for that question. I believe that all tax dollars, from the first one to the last one, should follow the student. It shouldn't be restricted to a school. It should go to the student. If the parents decide that their their child is not being well supported in a school that they're attending, they should have the ability to pick up their marbles and go someplace else where they think the child will get a better result. Parents should have options beyond the 3 R's. and that includes special needs education as well.
Thank you, John. Peter Briggs.
I'd like to clarify that as a member of the Addison Select Board, this is just my opinion and I don't speak for the board. I do support people being able to have options. GM is not in the business of making custom vehicles. If you want a custom vehicle, you got to go to a smaller manufacturer. So I support school choice because what would it do to the most vulnerable? It'd bring down the threshold so that now what is available to the rich and the well-off will be available to the most vulnerable. And that is the ability to escape their zip code for an education. If our government's going to force everybody to go to school, then they should at least be able to choose what school works best for them. Otherwise, forcing people into an education system that doesn't work for them doesn't look a lot like what you'd see in a free society, and I want to live in a free society.
Thank you, Peter. All right, so the last question here before closing statements, we're going to try something a little different with the lack of a 10th question. It has nothing to do with singing or baseball, so you can all be rest assured that we won't go in that direction. But what we're going to do is we're going to have and invite each candidate to select a topic of their choice that hasn't been discussed and covered yet and speak for 1 minute. Please note that this is separate from your closing statement, and please be mindful of your 1 minute response. We're going to start with, in this case, Tim Buskey.
Okay. Okay, let's take healthcare since that's where I spent the last 15 years at Vergennes Residential Care in Vergennes. First of all, let's remember the difference between healthcare and health insurance, affordable health insurance. Let's take a look at Obamacare. It was a great attempt at controlling the cost of health insurance and made it available to anyone that wished to purchase it. In Vermont, the Affordable Health Care Act pushed us into the establishment of a healthcare exchange. As a small business person, in the midst of the change, I made every effort to join the exchange and provide our 19 employees with the health insurance. We were unable to provide the health insurance. We were able to join the exchange program, but it was a pretty rushed job. We tried our best to get into it. In the area of health insurance, eliminating some of the community rating and encouraging competition within the market can lower the cost of health care for all Vermonters, and we need to take a good look at where our Green Mountain Care Board is going and who's on it and how much it costs.
Thank you, Tim. Diane Lanpher.
Thank you. And I always do better if I've got a second to think, so thanks. I would have to say the thing that we didn't discuss tonight, that if I'm feeling where my community is at and some of the things that are percolating to the top, other than all the important issues that we've discussed, is racial justice. Right now, I think our country and our state and even our own district here is kind of awakening to those very, very difficult conversations around of examining our own actions, examining our own policies. How are we structuring government and the way that we conduct business in a way that is fair and equitable? And it's a very difficult conversation to have. And I think we're doing it. We're beginning to do it both in Montpelier and across the state. And I hope that we continue to take the time to do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. Steve Thurston.
Well, one of the things we didn't really get into tonight, and it's been a hot topic, I think, is the question of internet access and how important that is to the future of especially rural Vermont, because fiber does connect the cities in Vermont, serves the cities, and cable's available to 78%. But I found out recently that copper wire DSL is available to 98% of Vermonters. I don't know too many people that don't have internet connections in Vermont. and 98% connectivity says to me that we're not really missing a lot of people. There are some people that aren't served because they're on that last couple miles of a dirt road, and maybe they're even off the grid. But if they have a cell phone, they would have internet connectivity through their data. So to the extent that the state needs to be involved in trying to find ways to improve broadband internet, I think the market is going to do that. And as more and more people demand faster speeds, that's going to come. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Matt Birong.
Yeah, thank you. I want to take a second actually and discuss the Vermont National Guard. That is one of the purviews of the committee that I currently sit in. About 2 months ago, two other House members, Representative Laura Sibilia, an independent from Dover, and Representative Lisa Hango, a Republican from Berkshire, who is in my committee as well, approached me about starting a National Guard caucus within the legislature, something that we felt there was an absence of. So we agreed to found and co-chair this new caucus to touch on a bunch of different topics surrounding the Guard. We have a lot of community members here in Addison 3 and throughout Middlebury who serve within the Guard. We have a large-scale deployment coming up next year. So it's important that we help identify resources that are needed for the families of those who are deployed, and also use this as this caucus as a resource. We are actually the only legislature that still elects its adjutant general through the legislative within the legislature. So it's by nature a little bit more political than most other gubernatorial appointed positions like that. So we see this as an important thing to bring up discussion within the public, the legislature itself, and the Guard, so we can help guide policies in a more amenable and open way.
Thank you, Matt. Peter Briggs.
I'd like to talk about two issues quickly. One is Vermont farmers, it was brought up, has reduced the phosphorus emissions by 11%, which I'm not surprised. We're very resourceful. But the phase 2 of this is going to have to be IC, in which people that emit, or entities that emit and don't have use, like sewers and roads and bridges, we're going to have to bend those streams around to those that do use it, like farms and forestry, if we want to keep cleaning up the lake. And the other thing is supply chain integrity could be a serious problem in the future. And I do believe we have a great opportunity here in Vermont in which we won't have to see a lot of people starve if the government doesn't get in the way of farmers providing products to the consumer. We used to have more child care providers in the state until Montpelier came in with a bunch of regulations that put a lot of them out. And I would hate to see any more of that happen in critical supply chains like food, housing, energy, the like.
Thank you, Peter. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. I was going to discuss racial justice, and Representative Lanpher beat me to it. So I'm going to talk about an issue that's related, and that is criminal justice and policing reform. I'm really, really proud of the work that we did in the legislature this year. We passed the Juvenile Justice Reinvestment Act, or Act 148, to reform Vermont's furlough and parole system and reinvest savings into domestic violence prevention and mental health services. We embedded mental health clinicians in the state police force. We required the collection of traffic stop racial data as a requirement to getting state aid for local police departments. We limited use of force and have a pending report on a model statewide policy, updated the definition of justifiable homicide, updated parameters for unprofessional conduct to include prohibited restraint and failure to intervene when another officer uses prohibited restraints. We automatically expunged all criminal history records for violations related to cannabis, and we have more to do with several pending reports due to the legislature in 2021. So I think that this work is really noteworthy, and of course we have a lot more to do, but we've done some great work this session, and I think we have a firm footing to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Chris Bray.
I'd like to come back to universal primary care. I support reducing healthcare costs through universal primary care because it can drive down healthcare costs for an entire community by ensuring that people get to a doctor as soon as they need to. And today, too many people avoid the doctor's office because of expensive deductibles, co-payments, co-insurance charges. We know that timely primary health care avoids expensive hospitalizations and emergency room visits because it prevents disease and it treats conditions earlier. It saves everyone money because we're all insured in pools of patients. And when any patient seeks timely care, it reduces the cost not only for that patient, but for everyone in the pool. Since 1989, I want to just remind us all, Vermont has successfully operated a universal healthcare program for children and pregnant women, Dr. Dinosaur. We do know how to run such a program cost effectively, and we can do this for everyone.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And thank you all for those insightful questions and answers in your comments. So now, that's the last question you'll get from me tonight. I don't know about in the future, but for tonight, you're done. Thank you. So now, what we'd like to do is invite each candidate to make their closing statements, 1 minute each. We'll start with House candidates and then the Senate candidates, all in reverse alphabetical order. So we'll start with Steve Thurston.
Can I interrupt for a moment? I believe we skipped over Jon Christiano for that last question.
You would be right, and I apologize, John. So sorry about that.
That's okay. I was going to try and wrap it into my closing statement.
Well, we'll give you that opportunity now. Sorry about that, John. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the Global Warming Solutions Act. I believe I heard tonight that there's a plan from the committee that was appointed or put together that's going to drive us to success in this area. But I have not heard anybody identify exactly what that needs to be or even broad brush it. And I don't think they know. And I disagree adamantly with the idea that the legislator has not abdicated its responsibility to the citizens of the state. They have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So to the closing statements, we're going to start with Steve Thurston.
Well, thanks again for putting this together. It's been an enjoyable evening and very informative. I'd like to come back to my opening statement and talk a little more about the need for balance in the legislature. And I don't think that the idea that when a governor vetoes a bill, that it can be overridden without both parties having some say in that. And when we have a situation where the supermajority of Democrats and progressives can all by themselves, without any Republicans participating, override the governor's veto, we essentially have one-party rule. And I think that's dangerous for our democracy. And that's one of the primary reasons that I'm running is to help create more balance in the legislature and be there to support Governor Scott's vetoes when he finds a bill such as the Global Warming Solutions Act to be unconstitutional. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Diane Lanpher.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you for your time tonight. I am committed to the people living in Addison 3 now more than ever. I know that I've been in the legislature for 12 years, and it is important to bring that leadership and the experience, especially with the years that are lying ahead of us. There's many unknowns. There'll always be unknowns, but we kind of got a few to deal with this year. So after visiting you with your homes for a dozen plus years, I'm really sorry that the COVID has placed limits on our capacity to meet and talk in person, but your calls are welcoming. And I'm committed to Vermont and to bring a positive attitude and approach to the issues that balances the desires of people with our financial responsibility. It is a pleasure to work for you and to be a part of your closest personal issues. I pledge to continue to show up ready, willing to engage and listen in Montpelier and or on Zoom on your behalf. And thank you very much for your support and for your vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. Tim Buskey.
We face an urgent need for change in Vermont. Change in the way that we tax and spend, change in our treatment of small business, change in the recognition of personal responsibility, change in support of the rule of law and the importance of a well-trained, compassionate, impartial law enforcement presence in our communities. Change to local control of schools and school choice as a path to educational excellence. As we examine these issues, I'll offer my diverse view. I'll listen and respect your opinions. I'll take the responsibility to serve and the responsibility to preserve representative government and where people control policy through elected representatives. I'm committed to a new direction for the legislature, one that will look at all sides of the issue before making laws. I respectfully ask for your vote.
Thank you, Tim. Matt Birong.
Yes, thank you. So 2 years ago, I ran because I felt like there needed to be more of a voice of business owners, especially what I guess is perceived on the younger side. That always kind of makes me giggle as somebody who's, creeping into their 40s, that I'm considered the younger side. But within the last 2 years, especially during COVID, I feel like that I've had an amazing impact on what that true boots on the ground perspective is, especially around relief packages, around what the design of labor policy should look like. I'm a collaborative worker. I mean, one of the resources that I bring after 25 years of restaurant experience is it's a very broad range of people that work in restaurants. And you have to learn to work with a lot of different backgrounds, varying education levels, the whole spectrum, the whole gamut. So that's one of the attributes that I bring to the legislature, is somebody who's a willing participant in conversations and can really work with a wide range of personalities, ideas, and thought processes. So within all that, I ask for everyone's vote to be reelected again. I have a lot of work to build on from the last 2 years, and I just want the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Ruth Hardy.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. As your state senator, I've worked hard to be as accessible and responsive as I can. Throughout the COVID crisis, I've written regular updates about the virus, state resources, and community stories. I've helped hundreds of constituents access vital benefits and services. I have listened to many constituents to better understand their perspectives and needs. I've been a strong advocate for the Addison district, ensuring you have a voice and a seat at the table. I look forward to continuing my work next session, tackling issues that we were not able to fully address during this crisis-driven session, including climate change, criminal justice reform, racial justice, access to college, school finance, and healthcare. I also want to ensure we act on the lessons we learned from the pandemic. The next several years of recovery will be difficult for our state and our country, so we must have collaborative, compassionate leaders with the experience and skills necessary to move us forward. It has been an honor to represent you in the State Senate. My name is Ruth Hardy, and I again ask for your trust and your vote this fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Jon Christiano.
Yes, thank you very much. First and foremost, this has been a difficult but a rewarding experience for me. It's a stretch for me, but it's been a good stretch. And I'm glad I live in a state, a county, a country where I have this kind of an opportunity. All too many people around the world and even in this country don't have the same opportunity. So I'm grateful for that. I realized that there would be an awful lot to learn if I were elected to this position that I'm running for, but I give you my pledge that I would work hard to be open-minded, work with people across the other side of the aisle, believe it or not, and that I would listen to the constituency and search out your thoughts and your concerns. Thank you very much. I ask you to vote for me on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Jon. Peter Briggs.
I'd like to thank the Chamber for hosting this forum. It's very helpful in getting our points of views out, and I've enjoyed these last 3 sessions, so thank you. The biggest thing I believe I had to take to Montpelier is that I'm not an expert. And to help explain this, I'll read you something from Winston Churchill. Nothing would be more fatal than for the government of states to get in the hands of experts. Expert knowledge is limited knowledge, and the unlimited ignorance of the plain man who knows where it hurts is a safer guide than any rigorous direction of a specialized character. If you want somebody in Montpelier who knows where it hurts, then I'd ask for your vote this November for John and myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Chris Bray.
I want to thank our host tonight, the Addison County Chamber, also citizens who are viewing at home, and especially all my fellow candidates. Democracy thrives when we all participate. In my 12 years in office, I've had literally tens of thousands of communications with you all, some in person, some on the phone, some by email. And I appreciate each and every one of those conversations. From you, I've learned a great deal about many issues, and you've shared with me what you think we're doing well in Vermont and where you think we can make improvements. I've learned that we all want a stronger economy, and not just any economy, but one that is environmentally sound and that plays to our unique strengths here in Addison County. That's why a decade ago, I started Farm to Plate, which is helping rebuild food and agriculture, employs over 7,000 Vermonters. That's why I've been a champion for our clean energy economy, which provides good paying jobs to over 18,000 Vermonters. That's why I've worked so hard on our clean water programs, because clean water is essential to healthy living, to recreation, and to our tourism industry. There is so much more that we can do for ourselves in the worlds of farming, forestry, clean energy, and clean water. All will employ Vermonters to build a more robust economy, a healthier environment for ourselves, our children, and their children. So I ask for your continued support and your vote this election, and thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Well, that concludes our forum. Thank you very much to all the candidates and your commitment to Vermont. Good luck in November. And thanks to the audience. Fred, you have some closing words. Fred Kenny.
Yes, thank you. I'm Fred Kenny, Executive Director of the Addison County Economic Development Corporation. This concludes the 2020 Addison County Legislative Candidate Forum Series, brought to you in partnership with the Addison County Chamber of Commerce. I'd again like to thank our media sponsor, the Addison Independent, as well as all of the candidates and the local residents who joined us. Thanks also to our moderator, Shawn Oxford, who did a great job. And since this is the last forum of three, I want to thank our timekeeper, Demetrius Borg, and a special shout out to Sarah Audette, who is instrumental in organizing these forums and arranging all the details. The recording of this forum will be available on the Chamber of Commerce website by the end of the week at www.addisoncounty.com and on the Economic Development website at www.addisoncountyedc.org. And in the near future, it'll also be on MCTV. Thanks again and have a great night, and vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.